the Washington Redskins exposed themselves as being the fraudulent puppies that they are, the way that they performed last night. It's not that they lost. It's not even that Drew Brees had a decent night or whatever. It's the fact that just the totality of the moment involving Drew Brees. They almost came across as fans who wanted who wanted Drew Brees to break the damn record.
I'm going to ask you that real quick. Didn't it look like on the record-setting pass that almost they gave it to him?
It really looked bad. I'm not accusing them of doing it.
But it looked like that was
I'm just talking about
easy.
how it looked, okay? It looked like they just took the night off. It's like, look, we ain't got no chance. This is a beautiful moment. I'm surprised they didn't say. As a matter of fact, I want to be sure, because I might not be sure. Did they just stand up and applaud for Drew Brees?
I mean, he was 26 and 29.
Did the Redskins come to midfield and applaud Drew Brees? Because it looked like they were doing that during the damn game. That's how embarrassing their effort was. And I want to thank Alex Smith again for reminding us why he's not in Kansas City, why he's not in San Francisco, why he's ended up in Washington, and why all of this noise about the Washington Redskins comes to a complete and immediate halt. They are ridiculously fraudulent as far as I'm concerned. They just looked that weak last night. Not as weak as the Yankees, but they looked that weak last night. Now, when I look at the NFC East, of course, it's the Philadelphia Eagles. But what I will say is this, and I'm very, very disappointed in you, Max, because here's why. We all respect Carson Wentz. We really, really do. He can ball. We know he was an MVP candidate before he got hurt last year. We get all of that. He's been back for a few games. He's probably not even 100% yet. We understand that. But we got to start talking about this man. If we were talking about him like he was so important to the Eagles franchise, right? And we were talking about what he would mean to them in terms of their Super Bowl aspirations. At some point in time when you're struggling against Tennessee and you're struggling last week against Minnesota, a defense that we found abhorrent just 2 weeks ago, okay? Then at some point in time, you got to sit up there and say, Carson Wentz, step up, handle your business. We know that you're working under dire circumstances, but just do it.
What part of coming back from an injury don't you understand? You thought he was going to be as good as when last seen game one?
No,
He's been back for 2 games.
I'm just saying that you got to talk about him. You got to talk about what he needs to do in order for the Eagles to be successful. That's all I said.
Here's the sad part. The Eagles are the best team in the NFC East.
The division's weak.
Yeah.
Because the division is terrible. But the Eagles can fix their problems. It just doesn't matter. None of these teams are going to contend for the Super Bowl. When you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, the inability to stop big plays, right? The inability to run the ball, the inability to protect your quarterback, those are all things that spell doom for any team in the NFL. And the only reason we can have this conversation and say that the Eagles will make it to the playoffs is because they play in the NFC East right now. The bigger issue I had with you, though, Stephen A., this isn't about Carson Wentz. Just like the Super Bowl wasn't about Nick Foles. The Super Bowl was about finding a running game. And it was a running game by committee, whether it was Blunt, Clement, whether it was Jay Ajayi. They learned how to run the ball. Because early on in the season, Carson Wentz was a dog last year. But they were still struggling to win games. They still had to fight in each and every game because they couldn't run the ball. So you know what they did? They found a way to do that. Defensively, they rushed the passer at a way higher clip and a way more productive way than they are right now. You stopped big plays over the top. You didn't get to the Super Bowl because Nick Foles was so good. We saw Nick Foles excel in the Super Bowl. It was about, right, the big play against Minnesota is what? So Long comes off the side, he bats the ball, it's an interception by Patrick Robinson, and he scores, right? That's how you beat Minnesota. You beat the Atlanta Falcons because the Atlanta Falcons can't get in the end zone. They have 4 tries for it in the red zone to win the game, and they can't do it. It was about defense. It was about ball control. This team has gotten away from that. This team enjoyed a championship run that wasn't just about the Philadelphia Eagles winning the Super Bowl. It was about a city starved for a champion celebrating, and they forgot to focus on the little things.
But guys like Brandon Graham and these lines, like to me, the Eagles, the big difference is line play, both sides of the ball hasn't been good.
Absolutely.
That stuff tends to come together over the course of a season.
Here's why it's very, very dangerous for you or any NFL analyst to go up against me. This is about
why? Because you type on your computer?
No, not at all. I'm pretty brilliant at that too, but that's not the point. It's not the reason why. You have to understand something. I am not a guy that comes on national television and thinks that I know football more than Ryan Clark. That's this crazy dude. I don't do that. What I do is I listen to Ryan Clark. And I listen to football analysts, and I watch what you say, and I learn, and more importantly, my recall is pretty brilliant. Just check with any newspaper that I work for.
Your recall
any television.
is terrible. Terrible recall.
Let me tell you something right now. We don't even have to
distorted recall.
He has a great memory. You got to give it up.
Yes, he invents things and misinterprets
and let me tell you something right now.
Recalls them
Max would come over here and give me a hug if he realized how many times I saved his behind by not calling tapes up on him for what he says. Because he realized I'm very kind. What I'm trying to say to you, Ryan, is this. Back in 2017, when the Eagles were en route to that 10-1 start, do you realize that I watched Ryan Clark every day? Okay. And you realize I watched you rave about Carson Wentz. You talked about the Eagles in need of a running game, particularly before they picked up Jay Ajayi. You talked about their secondary roles, particularly when Ronald Darby went out with that injury earlier on in the season. You pointed to some of the errors. You pointed to some. Listen, I'm a pro, baby. I'm trying to be here for you. The point that I'm trying to make to you is I listened to what you said. And you know what Ryan Clark religiously said, Molly? Every week.
Yeah.
They have Carson Wentz. So he's able to gloss over these mistakes that are clearly evident. Now, for this team to win a Super Bowl, they're going to have to fix those things. But right now, the biggest reason why Carson Wentz is the MVP is because he covers for all of their deficiencies. So what is wrong with me sitting here right now and saying these same deficiencies that exist now, this dude is going to have to step up and say, hey, excuse me, you need to help overcome it eventually. I'm not talking about right now.
Sure.
He has to do. What's wrong with that? Tell me what's wrong with that.
Here's what's wrong with that. This team isn't the same team. Teams change year to year. Even though they're the same deficiencies.
Is it the team or is it Carson Wentz?
It's not Carson Wentz at all.